Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming. So in just a few moments, we'll begin. Just so everyone is aware, we are recording this session. So please let me know if you object to that. And if you've got any questions throughout the talk, maybe utilize the chat feature, and I'll try to keep an eye on that and address the speaker. And without further ado, today we're going to hear from Dr. Andrew Finland from Western Carolina University, and I will let him tell you all what he's going to speak to us about.
Hello, everyone. How are you all? I hope you're doing well today. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some work that I did last year, and for me, it was a new kind of work. I've never done this kind of work before. It was through an organization called Token Engineering Academy, and the purpose of Token Engineering Academy is to be an academic institution for what's called token engineering, which is related to cryptocurrency. So you may have heard of Bitcoin and Ethereum. And what you may not know is there are approximately 40,000 Ethereum-based tokens that are currently in circulation, owned by at least one person. And the companies and organizations that release these tokens think about things like, if we have 10 million tokens, what's the best way to release these tokens to maximize our USD value or to maximize demand? And this field is called tokenomics. I learned that there was going to be a research program on something called GitCoin. So GitCoin is now one of these tokens that is been developed in the Ethereum ecosystem. And one aspect of the program is something called GitCoin grants. GitCoin grants is intended as a way that you can obtain public funding through cryptocurrency, what's called Web3 mechanisms. The way this works is anyone who has an Ethereum wallet can choose a project that they want to donate to. People propose projects that they think are worth donating to. And if you read the project description and you think it's worth donating to, then you click on it and you say, I'd like to add to this, and you choose a donation amount. GitCoin has matching funds. So whatever amount the users choose to give to a project, GitCoin will also give some amount of money to that project. And so the amount of money you give is amplified. Now, what makes GitCoin distinctive is that GitCoin uses a procedure for allocating the matching funds called quadratic funding. This is a problem we see all the time. And one mechanism that you could do is you can say, well, here are these projects, and here are these people who want to give money to projects. And then you have this pool of matching funds. And the question is, once these donations are given out, how do you allocate the matching funds? There was a mechanism proposed for this by three authors, Buterin, Hitzing, and Sybil, and they called this idea liberal radicalism. Now, it has nothing to do with liberal as a left-wing political policy. Rather, it's trying to return to the roots of liberal philosophy or liberal democracy from several hundred years ago. When they use the term radical, it's intended in three ways. The first, as you'll see mathematically, this radical or this square root function is extremely important in the actual calculation. Radical also means root, and they're talking about returning to the roots of this liberal democracy paradigm. And the third idea of radical is what you may be thinking of, which is it's something that's very extreme or different from the way things are currently done. Under what we might call capitalism or a free market, when people make their donations, the matching funds would just be proportional to exactly whatever the matching amount was. So if we have three users who each give $1 to a particular grant, then the matching funds would also be $3, and the total funds that project received would be $6. Whereas if we have one super user who gives $3 to another project, then that user would also receive $3. And so both grants would receive $6. And the problem is, what if we have something where there's an extreme mismatch between the A's, the small users, and the B, the big users? So you have 1,000 users who each donate $1, and you have one user who donates an incredible amount of money. In some sense, it doesn't feel right that this project should get $1,000. It feels like there's a broader base of popular support. What we do, instead of actually allocating proportionally based on donations, is we allocate proportionally based on the square root of the donations. So the algorithm for calculating this is, according again to this 2018 work of the authors I mentioned, you take the square root of each individual user contribution, you add up all of those square root calculations, and then you square the results. You're thinking about this as a graph, and you can look at the weight of each edge in the graph as being a contribution. And then you're taking the square root of each edge weight, you're adding up those square roots and you're squaring. So I did not mention this explicitly, but the framework that I had here was a bipartite graph where I had the users in one part and the grants in the other, and I could look at the donations amounts as the weights of the edges. That here, then in my 3 users who each give $1, when I take the square root of 1 plus the square root of 1 plus the square root of 1 and square it, I get 9 for my matching funds. And so this project would get $12. Whereas my large user who donates $3, well, square root of 3 squared is 3. So this project will now get $6. And now the fact that the first project had a broader base of support is somehow reflected in the matching fund. Notice that in this case, the richer user isn't any worse off. In both cases, they got $6. But the more popular project got more money, which which liberal radicalism or quadratic funding is intended to do. So that's a description of the mechanism and how it might differ from traditional matching funds viewpoint. In a real world, the matching pool is going to have limited resources, so you won't actually get probably an amount equivalent to or greater than your donation sizes. Instead, you'll just allocate it proportionally. So if there was a matching fund pool of $1, then we would just scale it, and the more popular project would get 75 cents, and the less popular project would get 25 cents. Now, you can imagine this more generally. You can imagine that we have a $1 matching pool, and we have an unknown number of users who are each giving $1 compared to our user who's giving in dollars all in one go. And now we can think about what's going to happen when we do this. When we take the square root, add it up and square. What's going to happen is that as the number of $1 givers here increases, that they begin to take a larger and larger proportion, asymptotically approaching the entire matching pool. And that's, again, an intended consequence of the algorithm or the formula as it's designed. But if we look back at B, they may become upset about this. They may think, well, I'm giving all this money and I'm outbid by all these people. And so if they're strategic and intelligent, they may realize that they're not being incentivized to play fairly. If B can hire people to each give $1, then they can even the situation. And if B has much more money than the A's do, then they can create lots of friends or hire lots of friends who will each give $1 on their behalf, and then they can come to dominate the matching pool again. And so this is what's called a Sybil, after a movie where a character named Sybil has multiple personalities. Because in an internet situation like GitCoin, this is especially virulent. There's no way intuitively or natively to tell if someone is a real person or if these are a lot of fake accounts. And so what happens is the desired behavior at first glance is completely indistinguishable from what we would consider this dishonest behavior, because there's no limit to how many accounts I can create, and I can just have each account give a small amount of my wealth. And if I do that, I will dominate the matching pool. So that's a Sybil attack that is highly undesirable. And there's a question in the chat: how would something like this handle someone who donates $1 to both grant 1 and $1 to grant 2? And there's nothing that says you can't do that. In each case, it would just get plugged into the formula as the square root of whatever your contribution was. You're totally not obligated to just give to one project. And in fact, we'll see this algorithm is going to be increasingly further modified as we think about the different things that could go wrong. And the funding formula that's used in practice is a bit more complicated than what I've described, but this is the basic idea. Lots of small donations should win, but that's a problem because there's nothing keeping me from just making my donations arbitrarily small and disguising it by creating new people.